The National Football League continues to expand its international horizons. One such branch of this is the inclusion of NFL players in the upcoming Summer Olympics in Los Angeles in 2028. Well, Giants got a couple of star players, especially one guy at wide receiver. He might be the perfect guy to play for Team USA. What do you think? Let's talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown live. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. I'm Paul Dottino. So glad you could join us tonight. We'll be here for the next hour or so to talk New York Giants football with you. And obviously, a lot of news around Big Blue this week. And, it was supposed to be a slow week, right? There wasn't supposed to be a lot of stuff going on. This was supposed to be kind of that lull before the OTAs begin next week as the teams continue to go through their conditioning drills. And, next week, beginning on Tuesday, the OTAs start up and the guys get to go out there on the field and, at least get some stuff done. They won't be in full pads. They won't be fully practicing, but at least they'll be able to get some stuff done. Well, turns out, guess what? The NFL had other ideas. They made this a little bit more of a busy week than what we anticipated. So, what do we have? Well, first thing we have are these rule proposals. Now, folks, I want to hear from you. I'll discuss exactly what happened over the last 48 hours with the 4 proposed rules changes. I'll let you know how I feel about it. And then what I'd like to see is, your chats, your audio calls, your video calls, however you guys want to reach out to me. I'll be very glad to take your thoughts. There's no right or wrong answer here. I want to make that very clear. Everybody's entitled to an opinion, whether they like what happened or don't like what happened with these rules changes. And hey, we'll see as time goes on if the NFL adjusts or decides to just leave things as they are. Couple of quick notes to get to, though, before I get to the rules changes. Of course, we'll be back next Wednesday night after the first media availability of the OTAs. That means, these light practice sessions that they'll go through. Next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be back with our regularly scheduled show once again. And it'll be right after the first media availability so that we're free to talk about what we saw and also free to talk about all of the things that we gather from the staff and from the players in our interviews after the session. So that's coming up next Wednesday night. But for now, no sense in getting anybody else involved. I've got enough of opinions on this stuff myself. So I'm going to go at it. And it's up to you guys. It is up to you guys, all right, to tell me how you want to go here. So first off, the Giants do have an opening preseason game in Buffalo. The Buffalo Bills announcing within the last 24 hours, as you know, the Giants had put TBA when they put out their schedule. They're going to play the Buffalo Bills on the road, the New York Jets at home, and the New England Patriots at home during the preseason. Well, the Bills did announce that on Saturday, August the 9th, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the Giants will be coming up to face the Buffalo Bills on the road in the preseason opener. The Bills made that announcement yesterday. So let me just get that out of the way. I could also tell you that from what I understand, there will be no dual practice session between the Giants and the Bills. Now, that doesn't mean there can't be something with the Jets or with the Patriots as training camp progresses, but it's my understanding there will not be any double practices with the Buffalo Bills. Just to get that out of the way, I know there have been some rumors on the internet about it. I do not believe that is going to be the case. All right, that's number one. Number two, Hard Knocks in season. Now, this particular HBO series usually chronicles 4 teams within a given division in a time frame somewhere around the final third of the regular season. Okay? After the midpoint, going somewhat into the final third or so that we have an understanding. The league did pick the NFC East for the 2025 season, which means Washington, Dallas, Philadelphia, and the Giants are all going to be part of the 4-week series of in-season Hard Knocks in the final third of the regular season. Now, look, I don't think I need to explain this to you. The Giants are in a very critical season in their franchise's recent history. Right now, they're kind of leaning on a tightrope, trying to figure out, can they get back to being competitive and being respectable and being what the Giants are supposed to be again this year? Or are they going to continue to suffer some of the doldrums that they've had for most of the past decade? It is a very critical year for this team. There is no doubt about that. We know that the front office is desperately going to do everything they can to win as many games as possible. And you know that if there's a bad streak, start of the season, middle of the season, before you even get to these Hard Knocks people, the heat's going to be turned up from outside the building. And so it's going to get harder and harder and harder for the team to ignore those distractions if things go awry in either of the first 2/3 sections of the year. For that reason alone, I'm disappointed myself that the league decided to take the NFC East. Now, one could argue that Jerry Jones and his Dallas Cowboys are always a marquee team, so they probably will always love and enjoy and crave the attention of such a program. We know the Washington Commanders went all the way to the NFC Championship game this past year. So they're an exciting team that made a big turnaround last season. They put themselves back on the national map with Jaden Daniels. And so you could understand why the NFL probably wanted them as well. And obviously the Philadelphia Eagles, with a handful of all-star, superstar, all-pro caliber players, and being the defending Super Bowl champions, you could understand why the NFL would want the Philadelphia Eagles on the series as well. So 3 teams you probably knew the league was going to go after, and all 3 of those teams probably were not going to shy away from whatever juicy and positive publicity they could get their hands on. The Giants, I'm sure they'd rather just stay under the radar and go about their business and try to rebuild things this season. But they don't have a choice. So now, Hard Knocks, NFC East, will happen this season. Again, this comes out usually around the final third of the regular season when they start filming the program and then airing it on HBO. Now, of course, if you wanted to look at this in many other angles, one angle that you could look to, and I'm sure it would draw a lot of attention around the league and probably excite a lot of fans in New York, is if somehow, some way, Jackson Dart, who was expected to be the Giants' 3rd-string quarterback as the season starts, if his learning curve progresses so quickly that the plan to redshirt him as a rookie winds up going by the wayside, and they wind up somehow getting him into the lineup during the final third of the regular season, which of course would coincide with the Hard Knocks in-season series. So in that specific instance, Jackson Dart would obviously draw an awful lot of attention and be a very significant linchpin from a New York angle. And so maybe HBO was thinking about that too when they were trying to collect thoughts about which division they were going to try to focus on. Again, personally, it is my belief that the Giants will resist putting Jackson Dart into the lineup this season as long as they possibly can. And provided things go well, they won't need him to get into the lineup or compete for a job until 2026. I still believe that's the way to go. I'm sure HBO would rather Dart get a chance to start a game sometime during their month-long series. But that's another story for another time, and there's no need to really go any further with this other than to say it is what it is. The decision's been made. That's the division they picked, and we will see how it all plays out. I am curious as to what you folks out there might think. I would have preferred that they picked another division myself. Again, stay under the radar, stay out of the spotlight, just go about your business and try to turn things into a positive direction. That's how I feel about things. Okay, so now where do we go? I see a couple of you folks already coming in with your chat. Aiden Fink says, good evening, and hi to you, Aiden. And Scott Young says, the Tush Push should have been eliminated. I could not agree with you more. Big Blue says, looking forward to the show. He's got nothing going on, no interest in Hard Knocks or Olympic flag football. I do know it's 109 days till kickoff at Washington. Way to go, Big Blue. Okay, Aiden Fink does say he wishes that the Tush Push got banned. Scott Young does mention R.I.P. Rest in peace to Colts owner Jim Irsay. Sorry to hear this. I will second that motion, Scott. Certainly the Irsay family has been around the NFL for a number of years. And so that is rough news, obviously, for veterans of the league. Scott Young also saying no to Hard Knocks. I've had enough of that last season. I feel it could be a distraction, but I hope not. Well, the only one thing I will add about this before I get to the NFL rules proposals is that because that program doesn't focus on the first half of the season, you'd like to think that the Giants will figure out what they are as a team and will have formed an identity and will have somewhat determined the direction of their year before it gets to that point. Obviously, if you want to look at this in a positive sense, you'd like the Giants to hover around the 500 mark for the great deal of the first half of the year. And if they're hovering around 500 within a game or two in the middle of the schedule, well, that does make them relevant again. It does put them in the conversation, and it sets them up for a second half of the season after Halloween with stuff to look forward to, games to root for, players to watch, and scoreboards to watch, quite frankly, as you watch what the other teams in the division do. So, in one regard, I don't know if it's going to be much of a distraction because by that point, we'll know if the Giants' season is still meaningful or, and folks, you can't ignore the possibility, if it's already down the tubes by Halloween, which it has been in many of the last several seasons. That's just a fact of life. It's not something anybody around the New York area wants to see, but that is what's happened. By Halloween, the Giants' story for the season has really been written in many of these campaigns, and the second half of the season was not much to really write home about or really much to digest. You want those games to be meaningful. The idea is that you go at least past Thanksgiving and approach the December holiday with reasons to scoreboard watch and reasons to scream like heck about your football team. Well, let's just hope that maybe that's the storyline that Hard Knocks in season winds up filming during the latter part of the 2025 schedule. All right. Aiden Finks calls it soft knocks. All right. Here we go. Scott Young says, by the way, with all the rules changes they're trying to get, why don't owners try to have the pass interference rule changed? I don't like that at all. Well, you know what the problem is, Scott? They went to the challenge for pass interference a couple years back, and it was a mess. It was just a full mess by allowing replay to get involved. They couldn't legislate it correctly, and it made things worse. So because of that, I was all for taking it away. Unless they're going to legislate it correctly and cleanly, then don't try to do it, because all you're going to do is dirty things up, and that doesn't help anybody. All right, so let's go through over the last 36 hours, I guess, or so. We've had these 4 significant rules proposals that were all at the top of the headlines for the NFL. And I think the one that's the most interesting to Giants fans, because after all, they've got a very high-profile player at a skill position in wide receiver Malik Nabers. So the NFL, the league, not the Players Association, and this is important because the Players Association has not given their stamp of approval yet. I'm sure they will, but they have not done that yet. So that still needs to be cleared before this can actually happen. And the Olympic Committee also is going to have to iron out details, not only with the Players Union, but also with the NFL in terms of scheduling, the medical staff requirements, the facilities requirements. There are details here that still have to be smoothed over. But the NFL owners did approve of a rule that says no more than one player per NFL team can participate in flag football during the 2028 Los Angeles Summer Games. A team could also send a designated international player as well, which, as you guys know, there's that international program where about 10 to 12 players every year from foreign countries get to come over here and train with these NFL teams. McInerney, the kicker for the Giants, was originally part of that as an Irishman from Rutgers. They've had some other players too over the last couple of years. Mubutaka, Ray Mubutaka was an offensive lineman. If you recall, Osia Manura had been his mentor, and he was here for a season. All right. Appropriate injury protection for the players, that is an NFL-based insurance policy, and salary cap credit to any team that has an Olympic originated injury on its roster. They're going to get a credit in the cap. If they're doing anything regarding the flag football for the Olympics and they get injured. Those are 2 huge factors. I don't believe without those 2 things, this resolution or rule would have passed. But because you're giving insurance to the players, and you're also telling the teams they'll get salary cap relief for an Olympic-related injury, those 2 things, in my mind, had to be cleared, or there's no way this thing ever would have had a chance. The Olympic Committee must, quote, implement certain minimum standards for medical staff and field surfaces, unquote, so says the NFL. That's what I just discussed with you a moment ago. And any flag football obligations would not, quote, unreasonably conflict, unquote, with a player's league and team commitments. So that's where it stands. Now, I ask this of you. I think it's great that professional football players would have the opportunity to represent their country. The NBA sends players into the Olympic basketball competition. We've seen baseball players, participate in the World Baseball Classic as part of Team USA. Aaron Judge of the Yankees is going to be the captain for the next edition of Team USA. So we've seen that. We know Edwin Diaz of the Mets was injured during the World Baseball Classic. Yes, I'm aware of that. That's always going to be a risk. It's part of what happens when, you're going to have these competitions. I understand that. And of course, in hockey, we've seen the NHL players participate for their respective countries in the Olympics as well. So football was the only one of the four major sports where none of those players could suit up and represent their team. Now, as I said earlier today on Big Blue Kickoff, you'll have a lot of football players who are track stars. And you know what? Yeah. They get chances to participate in the summer games. You have some football players who were college wrestlers. And perhaps if they wanted to follow that path, they could enter the Olympic Games maybe as a wrestler. You had Ebner, the former Patriot and Giant, who was a rugby player for Australia, Nate Ebner, and was participating in the Olympics. So it can happen, but for the most part, professional football players don't ever have a chance to suit up for their country. And so, that's an interesting dynamic to allow it to happen. I have no problem with it. It was passed unanimously by the NFL owners under these conditions that we talked about. And I think that's fine. There'll be some players like Justin Jefferson, the receiver for the Vikings, who very badly wants to play for Team USA. And I'm sure there'll be a whole bunch of other players in the league who won't want to take a chance. And that's okay too. What's nice about this rule is that if it follows through to the very end, players at least are going to have a choice and have an opportunity to do something really special. The chance to win an Olympic gold medal, man, think about the few people, percentage-wise, on this planet that actually get a chance to just even go and participate in the Olympics. And then if you win a medal, especially a gold, I can't even imagine what that's like. So I will say thumbs up to the National Football League for clearing the way and allowing the potential for NFL players who really want to do this, who think that this is like an extra cherry on top of their dream, to do something, to show patriotism, to perhaps compete and win a gold medal. You know what? Yeah, if they really want to go for it, I think they should be allowed to go for it. And if they don't want to go for it, that's perfectly fine too. I don't think any player should be criticized for either going or not going. I think it's a personal preference, and I think we should all applaud the league for allowing the players to have the right to choose. At least that's how I see it. Now, what I am interested about, and I don't have all the details on this yet because, this is relatively new. This rule just came out yesterday. I wonder, so they're going to play flag football. Is it going to be 7-on-7? I would think so, right? I don't think it's going to be 11-on-11s. it'll be 7-on-7s. So at least I suspect that way. If anybody knows out there, if you can refer me to an article, in the chat, by all means do. I suspect it's going to be 7-on-7s, which means you're strictly talking about the skill position players, I would think. But I don't know the answer to that. And so it doesn't open up the entire league to gain the right to go to the Olympics, but certainly a great many players would certainly have that opportunity. So I think that's kind of cool. So I ask you this, and we can pause for a second and get to some of your chats coming off of this topic, and then we'll move on to the second rule. But if you're the Giants, I think it's pretty obvious, right, that Malik Nabers is the highest profile Giant on the roster. Now, this is going to happen in the 2028 games in Los Angeles, so we're still more than a couple of years away. But I would suspect that he's the most likely candidate. Maybe he doesn't want to go. I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it. I'm sure he hasn't even thought about it yet. But I would think he's probably the most likely candidate to want to go and to try to make that Olympic team. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? I mean, I remember when Odell Beckham Jr. came to the Giants as a rookie and was setting all of these statistical categories on fire. Beckham was becoming a worldwide celebrity. He was as worldwide known as Pele was back in the 70s, or Ali was back in the 70s. Odell, everybody knew him by one name, Odell. And they all knew about the blonde stuff on top of his hair. And he was becoming a worldwide phenomenon. And when the Giants, as you may recall, went to London in 2007. No, let me correct myself. 2016. They did go to London in 2000. Oh, let me think about this again. I'm so lost now. I'm forgetting the dates. The year they went to London, that's right, it was 2016. They went to London and they beat the Rams. Okay. When they went, Beckham was a true rock star. The people over there went absolutely nuts for him. And as you remember, he also has quite a plethora of soccer skills as well, and he was never bashful about showing them off on video. So, the people in Europe, they were just gaga goo goo and bonkers over Odell Beckham. So here you have Malik Nabers, another LSU alum, skill position player, very flashy, very high caliber talent. I just wonder if Malik Nabers, in that regard, in terms of personality profile and Q factor, if you will, I'm curious to see if Nabers winds up becoming that next guy who maybe, in some regards, we already seen him replicate Beckham on the field. Might he replicate him in terms of star status as well? Interesting. All right, let me get to some of your chats here, and then we will continue going through some of the NFL rule changes. Scott Young says, I also feel the NFL is pushing offense and the defense doesn't get a leeway at all. No, it's been about doing everything they can for the offense for several years. That's because they love exciting plays to make the fans giddy and happy, and when people score points, it draws more interest. It's really simple. The idea is to get as much interest in the game as possible. Great defense doesn't draw as much interest as great offense. And so the league has done everything it can over the years to enhance the offensive capabilities and the possibilities of all of its teams and all of its players. They've always hurt the defense because offense sells. That's all it is, Scott. It's about marketing. It's not about the game. It's about business. Aiden Fink says, who's going to play for the other countries in flag football since they don't play American football in other countries? Actually, they do, Aiden. They have a number of semi-pro, if you will, American-style football leagues over in Europe. Seriously, they do. Let's see. Scott Young says, the only thing about flag football is I'm afraid about the injury factor, and I do understand that, Scott. And that's why the NFL put in those nuggets into the rule, because without those nuggets about the injury protection and the salary cap rebate, I don't think it ever would have happened. Aiden Fink says he just looked it up. It's going to be 5-on-5 in Olympic flag football. Scott Young says that is correct. It's 10 players on each squad, according to Scott. Okay, there you go. Well, I appreciate you guys doing the work for me on that one, because I've had my hands full for the last couple of days, and I just haven't had time to dig into that. Not only is that something that's far away, but it's not something that really involves what's going to be happening in training camp this year anyway. All right. Aiden Fink says, all the kids wanted to make the OBJ catch back in the day. I was in 7th grade when he made the catch as a rookie. Worldwide sensation. Yeah, that's true, Aiden. That's true. I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Would you agree that Nabers probably makes the most sense, of the Giants players who, might have a chance to go? Would he make the most sense? I think so. Could he perhaps replicate some of the thunder that OBJ had? Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you think about it, what's this whole thing about anyway? Yes, it's about giving the players the right to choose and participate for their country. Sure. But what else does it do? You had Roger Goodell on an interview, I believe it was earlier today, or maybe it was taped yesterday, I'm not sure, where he's saying as soon as possible he wants to get 16 international games on the annual NFL schedule. He's heck bent on doing everything he can to make the NFL a global game. And obviously, if you're going to have NFL players in the Olympics, you're going to draw more international attention to these athletes and therefore these teams and this league. So I understand exactly what's going on here. Aiden says LSU wide receivers, Chase, Jefferson, and Nabers should all be on the Team USA. Yeah, Aiden, it's interesting. If it's supposed to be 10 players on each squad, remember, you got to play both ways, right? I mean, Travis Hunter's name comes to mind immediately, doesn't it? Isn't he the most obvious selection for at least one of the spots? And then I'm sure there would be some type of taxi squad also. I would guess. You can't just have 10, because if it's a, 5-on-5, although would they play both ways? Maybe not. If it's 5-on-5, you don't have to play both ways. You could play 5 offense, 5 defense. But if you're going to separate them to 5 offense and 5 defense, you definitely have to have a taxi squad, because you're going to need a couple of extra players on offense and a couple of extra players on defense should somebody accidentally, not be able to play. And you're certainly going to need 2 quarterbacks, right? That's a lock. You're going to have 2 quarterbacks. You're not going to be able to just suddenly grab a guy out of thin air as the Olympics are actually starting and they're underway, and all of a sudden, well, we need a quarterback. Got to replace him. Let's get somebody over here. I don't see that happening. All right. Scott Young wants to know about the tight ends. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'd like to get through these rules first, if you don't mind, because I think that's the newsy item of the day. The Detroit Lions backed off and pulled back their plan to sort the playoff seeding by record. Lions wanted the 4 division champions and 3 wild cards in each conference to make the playoffs like we currently have today. Okay, and we'll get to Scott's question in a moment. Those 7 teams in each conference would be seeded by record. When teams have the same record, the first tiebreaker would go to the division champion, regardless of the head-to-head result. Then the teams would get reseeded after the first round. Reportedly, according to the networks, the Lions did not gain much traction on this proposal. And so rather than waste everybody's time, they simply withdrew it. And so we're keeping the playoff system exactly the way it is. I'm happy it's this way. Now, apparently, there is still a possibility that going into 2026, they will revisit the idea of reseeding after the first round. But that's only up for conversation. There's no vote on that right now. Why do I think it's good they withdrew this? Well, I don't like to take value away from the division champions. You play 6 of your 17 games, and I'm sure it's going to be 18 games probably within 2 years. Maybe even next year. Who knows? But you have 6 of your games within the division. It's more than a third of your schedule right now. In my opinion, because those games equate to so much a part of your season, they should mean an awful lot more. And while I understand and I get it, you have wild card teams with better records who have to be, as it stands now, road teams. And then you have teams with lesser records who won a division and get to be home teams. I understand. There are people who feel, home field advantage. I won more games. I should get the home field. No. I think that waters down and belittles the value of division games. First and foremost, every coach in the NFL goes into the season saying, we need to do whatever we can to win our division because that's the best way to get into the playoffs. I'm good with that. And as a division champion, you should get rewarded for it. Not just the ticket into the playoffs, but the reward of having a home game. So, or a bye, whatever the case may be, depending upon how high you're seated. I understand that. So I'm good with this proposal going by the wayside. The reports are that the Lions only had less than half of the league that was in favor of this proposal. And so it didn't seem like there was a ton of traction. I would not mind reseeding after the first round. That wouldn't bother me per se. But I'm still for the division winners getting the top 4 seeds and then reseeding after that with those teams getting the home games. Keeping that the way it is. All right. Declaration of onside kicks on the kickoff to be expanded beyond the fourth quarter. This passed, and I think that's great, because the worst part about changing the kickoff last season to the modified kickoff was that you couldn't do anything about it if you were trailing before the fourth quarter. The new rule, when a team is behind, they are allowed to request an onside kick at any time during the game. The ball is going to be placed on the tee at their own 34 instead of their 35. The kicking team will line up on the 35, and supposedly that extra yard behind them where the kicker meets the ball is supposed to make it a little easier for those players to chase it. I'm not sure I understand that part of it, but that's the theory. That's the rule that's passed. Last year, only approximately 6% of the onside kicks were recovered by the kicking team. Very, 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 very low number. I'm not so sure that it's going to increase very much, but I do like the fact that they have pulled off the restriction that forces you to wait till the fourth quarter. And I think the Super Bowl is a great example, folks. The Kansas City Chiefs were getting whacked by the Philadelphia Eagles. Late in the third quarter, the Chiefs scored, and they were desperately just trying to climb out of the quicksand and get back into the game. I think it's pretty obvious they would have liked to have tried an onside kick had the rule been in place like this year, had they been allowed to do it. And quite honestly, wouldn't all of us like to have seen the Chiefs execute an onside kick successfully and then immediately score again to somehow claw their way back and reduce the deficit to maybe make it a competitive fourth quarter? But that wasn't the case. It was still the end of the third quarter. They weren't allowed to do it. And so that's it. Opportunity to perhaps maintain the ball for a second straight possession and score went into the toilet. So I am all for having the trailing team the ability to onside kick at any time during the course of the game. All right, here is number 4. And this is the biggest one that probably garnered the most headlines, at least until the Olympic thing came about yesterday. The proposal said that an offensive player can't, quote, immediately at the snap, push or throw his body against a teammate who was lined up directly behind the snapper and receive the snap to aid him in an attempt to gain yardage, close quote. Also known as the brotherly shove or the tush push. Well, you guys know, if you've listened to me on the radio, on this program, or on Big Blue Kickoff Live during the day, I am all for banning this play. I do believe that it is a hazard and a bad injury waiting to happen. Chris Jones, the defensive tackle of the Kansas City Chiefs, did get his neck jammed on a tush push play during the Super Bowl. I've been very vociferous in my argument to ban the play. We saw the Washington Commanders in the playoffs finally do, after 3 years, what I thought some team would do earlier, and that is throw a defensive player hurtling across the line at the quarterback, trying to time it, which, by the way, is a very dangerous play. And if teams start to do that more often, which I think they're going to do because it looks like it might be the most effective way to stop it, that play over and over, the more time it is executed with a defensive player being used as a missile, is no doubt going to start leading to injuries. Then, of course, you have the other part to this play, where you have an offensive line plus the quarterback plus guys behind the quarterback. So you have 3 layers of bodies all pushing in one direction against a defense that is not allowed to push each other. You only have 1 level of defensive players pushing against 3 levels of offensive players. There's nothing fair about that. That's not a competitive snap. Just another reason why it should be outlawed. And then, of course, you have the whole dynamic of, well, if you don't like it, stop the play. That doesn't make it right. But this is the excuse that a lot of the proponents give you. Now, here's what we found out. According to the network reports today, the NFL Health and Safety Committee recommended to the ownership groups of the league owners at the meetings, they recommended that you ban the play. Now, I have not seen a statement from the Health and Safety Committee, the NFL's Health and Safety Committee, which is made up of a slew of highly respected medical professionals who are experts across their fields. That committee recommended that the tush push be banned. Somehow, the owners decided not to vote that way. The reported number, based on NFL Network and ESPN information, was that 22 votes would have banned it. You needed 24. There are 32 owners in the league. You need 2/3 of a vote to get a law to pass. So only 22 of the owners voted to ban the tush push, even after the NFL Health and Safety Committee, made up of highly respected medical professionals, suggested to them that you disallow the play. I don't know what's going on with that. I have not heard or seen any interviews with people who were in that room who could explain to me specifically why the committee recommended the ban and why more owners did not follow the recommendation. But it's done. So at least for another year, the play is acceptable. Now, here's an interesting thought, and I find this to be a very, curious piece of information. Tom Brady is regarded as the greatest quarterback sneak player in NFL history. According to ESPN, from the time Brady got into the league in 2000, his career percentage on quarterback sneaks of gaining the necessary yardage was 91%. 91%. He didn't need a tush push. He simply took the snap, maybe altered his cadence to keep the timing in a haphazard manner, if you will, using cadence, taking the snap, and then reading the defense and falling behind the crease that he saw. Tom Brady was 91% successful on quarterback sneaks. Over the last 3 seasons, according to ESPN's statistics, Philadelphia, the team that used the tush push the most, and Buffalo, the team that used it second most, combined to be successful on 142 tries out of 163. That's only 87%. So you tell me, folks, if the NFL's Health and Safety Committee says that they recommend to ban the play because of their recommendations, and we happen to know that a quarterback sneak under a normal formation has been executed by a player at a higher efficiency level than the tush push, well then why do we allow this play to continue? Because I don't want to hear that this is just an anti-Eagle thing. That's not what this is. We've proven by Brady's proficiency in quarterback sneaks that you're not hurting an offense by taking away the tush push. Just quarterback sneak it. Tell Jalen Hurts, you're so strong, you're so thick, you've got such a great offensive line. Well, then quarterback sneak it. Go ahead. See if you can get 91% and do better than Brady, who did better than Philadelphia and Buffalo's tush push. Take it as a challenge. Interestingly enough, ESPN over these same 3 seasons said that the 163 tries at the tush push by Philly and Buffalo combined was more than all of the other 30 NFL teams combined during that time. And those teams only had a 71% conversion rate on the play. So yes, Philadelphia and Buffalo are the best at executing the play. But as we've seen, Brady's 91% conversion rate on quarterback sneaks, that's the number that everybody should be trying to get to. Figure out how you can quarterback sneak with that proficiency, because it's been done. Tom Brady played in this game for a very long time. Over 20 years, as a matter of fact. So it's not a small sample size. And he did it better than any shove or push that's been done over the last 3 years. So why not just abandon the play? Ban the play. This is not an attempt to hurt Philadelphia or to hurt Buffalo. We're actually telling you and giving you a play that will be better for you. That will be better. It will work at a higher rate. So just give it up. Anyway, enough of that. We've got about 5 minutes left to the program. So let me see what you guys want to chime in on here. Let's see here. So Scott Young says, Paul, what are your thoughts on the tight ends? Do you think Bellinger is a possible cut? I do not. I think Daniel Bellinger is in a solid spot as the Giants' number 2 tight end. I suspect you'll see some more double tight end formations this season. even if that means Theo Johnson is a flex tight end, I do believe that Bellinger, who, by the way, does need a bounce-back season, okay? He's been injured some in his early Giants career, and I know that he hasn't reached his full potential all around that we were projecting him for when we saw this guy, first get to training camp a few years ago. I think there's more in his box, and I know the coaching staff really likes him a lot, and they appreciate him for all he does. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to be on the team. Whether or not they keep 3 or 4 tight ends, I don't know. They drafted Thomas Fidone in the 7th round this year out of Nebraska. We know they have 2 other tight ends on the roster. And to be honest with you, they're different kind of tight ends. You got Chris Manhertz, who's the blocking tight end. And then you have Greg Dulcich, who is a receiving tight end. I don't think the Giants keep 4 tight ends. It is possible, but I don't think so. I think they'll keep 3, but they could keep 4. So it's going to be quite a battle for that 3rd spot. Anyway, Scott Young says, leave the playoffs alone. I love the way it is now. That's just how I feel. Sorry. I'm with you, Scott. I've got no problem with the way it is now. Keep it the way it is. Mikey C., it's all about the cheerleaders. A game at a time. G-Men fans should expect the lights of Theo as a second wide receiver weapon. Go Big Blue. Shout out to P-Dot. Thanks, Mikey C. Mikey C. also says, my energy said if you put Neal next to Thomas, he'll be a Hall of Famer. It's 2 dancing bears next to each other. We'll see how that works out, because it does appear that Evan Neal's going to cross-train at guard come training camp. Scott Young's back with us again, says, what is Philadelphia's success rate on the Tush Push not combined with Buffalo? You know what, Scott, I have not seen that statistic anywhere. Let me see if somehow that is online somewhere. I have not seen it. Let's see here. Okay. I did find it. USA Today says, according to USA Today, since 2022, the Philadelphia Eagles have an 86% conversion rate on the Tush Push. And ESPN said during that time, Philly and Buffalo were at 87%. So we're talking about a minuscule percentage. Perhaps it's just the way they rounded it off. I don't know that. I'd find it hard to believe that the Bills were better than Philly. Now let's see here. USA Today says the Eagles have succeeded on 139. Well, that doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense, because this is over the last 3 seasons, Buffalo and Philly combined for 142 successes, which would then mean the Bills have only gotten 3 successful pushes. I don't know. This is what I'm finding. This is what I'm finding online right now. Yeah, see, this doesn't work now, because there's another ESPN stat that says the Eagles have an 86% success rate on 124 attempts. You know what the problem is? Nobody actually, quote, officially kept these numbers. since the Eagles started doing it. And I think a lot of people are going back into highlights and stuff and trying to recalculate the numbers long after the plays happened. And obviously, each individual person who's charting this stuff by going backwards is not coming up with the same numbers. So I wish I could give you a better indication, Scott, but that's the stuff. And these are reputable people we're talking about, USA Today, ESPN. But since there are no official numbers, there are no official numbers. So I don't know what else to tell you about the situation. Well, once again, we'll be back next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, for another live edition here on the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel with the Big Blue Breakdown Live. Remember, coming up on Tuesday is the first day of OTAs for the Giants. That's the next phase of the offseason program where they get out there on the field and they start doing more than just walking through some plays and conditioning drills. So this is the next step as we get closer and closer to training camp near the end of July. On Wednesday morning, the media gets their first open practice at the OTAs. So that's the day we're going to be able to actually talk about what we see and obviously get the reactions from the coach, the players, etc., etc. There'll be plenty of stuff to say and talk about following Wednesday's OTA number 2, the first one that is open to the media. So that's when we're going to be back a week from tonight, and we hope you will join us then. Maybe we'll get a special guest on that night. Depends on who attends practice. I know I'll be there. If there's another former Giant there who maybe is able to watch and listen in, and we can get their take, maybe we'll get ourselves a guest for next week's show. But until then, I'm Paul Dottino. This has been the Big Blue Breakdown Live. So glad you could join us tonight. So long, everybody, and we will see you next time.